Watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. We start with the world of business. There's been a meltdown on Wall Street. They lost $1 trillion in a day, the worst day in 2 years, thanks to the much-hyped AI stocks, artificial intelligence. Investors fear it's a bubble, and this is making tech giants bleed. We'll tell you what all of this means. Also in the US, Joe Biden has made his first speech after pulling out of the presidential race, and it's triggered conspiracy theories on him looking orange and AI-generated. Meanwhile, Netanyahu addressed the US Congress and proposed a NATO-style alliance against Iran. Another provocation from China and Russia. Their nuclear bombers were intercepted by the US near Alaska. Why a Pakistani family was thrashed by police at the Manchester airport. How the US is behaving like a toxic gaslighting boyfriend with India. Why Bangladesh is upset with West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. Can states wade into India's foreign policy? What kind of chaos would ensue? Why Paris is social cleansing ahead of the Olympics, evicting the poor and the homeless from the city. How Iran is building a border wall along Afghanistan and why it may not help. And what is competitive eating? Is it a sport? Why is it dangerous and popular? We'll discuss all of this and more. The headlines first. Kenyan police clashed with protesters in the capital, Nairobi. They fired tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. The youth-led protests have been going on since mid-June. At least 50 people have been killed so far. The protesters want the president to step down. The foreign ministers of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, are meeting in Laos. The three-day event is being held amid tensions in Myanmar and the South China Sea. The foreign ministers of Russia and China meet on the sidelines of the summit. It comes a day after China held talks with Ukraine. In Myanmar, rebels claim control of the regional military command in the Shan state, but the junta disputes the claim. Since last month, the northern Shan state has seen frequent clashes between the junta and ethnic armed groups. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Ladakh on Friday. He will be there to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Kargil War. Prime Minister Modi will pay a tribute at the Kargil War Memorial. Grand celebrations have been planned to mark India's victory over Pakistan in the 1999 war. And Meta deletes 63,000 Instagram sextortion accounts from Nigeria. The move comes just days after Nigeria slapped Meta with a fine of more than $200 million. The sextortion scams have triggered at least 20 suicides. Wall Street is bleeding. There was a mass sell-off on Wednesday. Investors lost as much as $1 trillion. $1 trillion in a day. And it may not be over just yet. So what triggered this fall? Artificial intelligence, or AI. It is like a ticking time bomb. Let me show you a list. These are tech companies. They were riding high on the AI wave, but now they're losing money. Nvidia, the biggest seller of AI chips, was down by over 6% yesterday. Broadcom, more than 7% down. Supermicro Computer, more than 9% down. And tech giants who made big bets on AI also saw losses in Wednesday's trade. Apple dropped by almost 3%. Microsoft, more than 3%. Meta, the parent company of Facebook, lost 5.6%, and Alphabet, that owns Google, lost 5%. The stock saw some recovery today, but the Nasdaq has opened in the red again. It was down by over 200 points about an hour ago, and this is quite a fall. Because until recently, there was massive demand for these stocks. AI triggered a rally in the tech sector. Big tech was sold on the promise of AI. They said it's the next big thing. It is the future. Google CEO Sundar Pichai has compared the AI breakthrough to inventions like fire and electricity. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said, "We are entering a golden age and AI is going to be good for humanity." Apple CEO Tim Cook is also bullish on artificial intelligence, as is Meta's Mark Zuckerberg, and all these tech titans have repeated such claims over and over again.
We're going to lead this wave in terms of the next generation of AI infrastructure that's needed.
Google search is generative AI at the scale of human curiosity, and it's our most exciting chapter of search yet.
Together, all of this goes beyond artificial intelligence. It's personal intelligence, and it's the next big step for Apple.
Big tech went all in on AI, and investors bought into their sales pitch. In the last 1 year, they've poured some $9 trillion into this space, $9 trillion. But now the investors are pulling out. A large number of them are pulling out, at least. They feel that there's a bubble and that the hype around AI is overblown. Now, tech companies are spending billions of dollars on artificial intelligence. They're buying chips, they're buying data centers, and soaking up massive amounts of power just to get their AI services up and running. And the result is this. The expenses of these companies are soaring. Microsoft has spent $14 billion in 1 quarter in capital expenditure. And this spending was driven by AI. What is capital expenditure? It is the money that a company spends on buying physical assets, stuff like chips and servers in this case, which are used to develop AI tools. This money, the money spent on building this infrastructure, is called capital expenditure, or CapEx in short. So Microsoft spent $14 billion in just 3 months. And they're not done yet. They're expected to divert more and more money into AI-related expenses. And the other players don't want to be left behind. They're also trying to match these numbers, if not beat them. Alphabet's CapEx stood at $12 billion. Again, this expense is for a single quarter, $12 billion. Meta, $7 billion. The company is projected to spend up to $40 billion in the entire year on AI-related capital expenditure. And finally, we have Amazon. They spent some $14 billion, so same as Microsoft. Long story short, big money is being thrown at AI, and the tech giants have no plans to stop. One estimate says that these companies will spend over $1 trillion on AI and related investments in the coming years, which is quite a significant sum. And it's prompting questions from investors. The most pressing question is this: what is the return on investment? Are tech giants making any money? What are they getting in return? And so far, the answer is that they're getting almost nothing. Here's an assessment from Barclays. It expects big tech to spend some $60 billion every year on developing AI models, $60 billion every year till 2026. And what will be the return on this investment? Just $20 billion a year. That is the projection, which means a $40 billion loss. It may or may not pay off in the long term, but as of today, it is becoming a less attractive proposition. Take the case of OpenAI, the makers of ChatGPT, arguably the most popular AI product out there. ChatGPT was launched in November 2022, so almost 2 years back. OpenAI offers 2 versions of ChatGPT. One is completely free to use, and for the other, there's a subscription fee. Now, reports say that ChatGPT has more than 100 million active users, 100 million active users, so OpenAI should be minting millions by now. But that's not the case. OpenAI is in fact bleeding cash. It could lose as much as $5 billion this year. The company could run out of money in just 12 months. And this sums up the problem with artificial intelligence today. It requires billions of dollars in investment, but tech giants have not quite figured out how to make money off it. They don't have a viable business model. And big banks and investors are now calling out the tech giants on this. Consider this quote. It is from Jim Coelho. He's the head of global equity research at Goldman Sachs. Listen to what he says about the AI boom. And I'm quoting, AI bulls seem to just trust that use cases will proliferate as the technology evolves. But 18 months after the introduction of generative AI to the world, not one truly transformative, let alone cost-effective application has been found. I have another assessment. This is from Sequoia, the venture capital company. They made early bets on companies like Apple, YouTube, and Instagram. Here is Sequoia's assessment on AI. Outside of ChatGPT, how many AI products are consumers really using today? Consider how much value you get from Netflix for $15.49 per month or Spotify for $11.99. Long term, AI companies will need to deliver significant value for consumers to continue opening their wallets. Now, all these assessments suggest one thing. There is an AI bubble, There is no doubt that this technology is revolutionary, but we are still miles away from unlocking its true potential. It is going to take time and a lot of investment to get there. Until then, the promise of AI remains just that, a promise with no ETA.
I revere this office, but I love my country more.
Joe Biden has broken his silence. He quit the presidential race 4 days ago, but after that, nothing. No statement, no reaction, not even an appearance. Many far-right Republicans claim that Biden was dead or in hospital. But on Wednesday, he put those theories to rest. Joe Biden made a speech from the Oval Office. He explained his decision to quit the electoral race.
I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think it's more important than any title. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
Democrats are going gaga. They can't stop raving about Biden's speech. They say he's protecting democracy. A bit strange, though. It took a debate disaster, a donor rebellion, and a party revolt for Biden to save democracy. Sounds like a reluctant savior to me. Nonetheless, he has done it. But a lot of questions still remain about Biden's future. He still has 6 months left in office. What would he do with it? Would he be a lame duck president, or would he try to leave a lasting legacy? The president answered that question too. Listen in.
Over the next 6 months, I'll be focused on doing my job as president. That means I'll continue to lower costs for hardworking families, grow our economy, and I'm going to call for Supreme Court reform because this is critical to our democracy. We'll keep rallying a coalition of proud nations to stop Putin from taking over Ukraine and doing more damage. And I'm going to keep working to end the war in Gaza, bring home all the hostages, and bring peace and security to the Middle East and end this war.
Again, strange. Biden took charge in 2021. He had 3 years in office to do all these things, yet he did not. So what's the point of talking about it now? Possibly legacy. Biden's rivals are shaping the narrative about him. They're calling him a quitter, someone ousted by his own party, someone who's unfit for office, which is why Joe Biden has unveiled this grand exit agenda. The question is, will it work? Well, his rivals are not convinced. Far-right Republicans are pushing conspiracy theories. Let me show you a couple of them. One claims that Biden was looking orange during his speech. It says the background was a green screen. And of course, someone had to blame artificial intelligence. This account claims the speech was AI generated. Another user said that Biden had a stroke, which is why his speech was slurry. Now, needless to say, this is all fake. Human beings are not orange. It's probably the lighting or tan, maybe even your television's contrast setting. As for the slurring, why is that even a surprise? The slurring is why Biden pulled out of the race, because he's too old and unfit. But tell that to conspiracy theorists on X. Their posts are gaining traction on the platform. On Sunday, X had 29,000 posts on Biden's medical condition. 29,000 on Sunday. By Monday, there were 120,000. And by Tuesday, 176,000 posts. Some of these posts had millions of views. And it's not just fringe Trump fans. Even Republican lawmakers are pushing this. So what's the solution? Ideally, the platform should take responsibility. They would have workers weed out the fake theories. But remember, we're talking about X. Elon Musk has fired 50% of the company's staff, so fact-checking is not what it used to be. The European Union had flagged this issue. They said X had more disinformation than any other social media platform. So why isn't Elon Musk doing something? Well, he's endorsed Donald Trump for president, so the real question is, why would he? After all, these theories help his candidate. Speaking of which, what is Donald Trump up to? On Wednesday, he held a rally in North Carolina, his first since Joe Biden's exit. As expected, he spent a lot of time attacking Kamala Harris. And as expected, he made it personal.
If Kamala Harris gets in, she would be the most radical far-left extremist ever to occupy the White House times 10. There's never been a lunatic like this in the White House, and we've had some bad ones. So now we have a new victim to defeat, Lion Kamala Harris, Lion, L-Y-I-N apostrophe. The most incompetent and far-left vice president in American history. But this November, the American people are going to tell her, no thanks, Kamala, you've done a terrible job. Kamala, you're fired. Get out of here. You're fired.
You can make out the strategy here. Personal insults are just one part of Trump's attack. He's also focusing on Harris's track record. She was in charge of the Mexico border. She was supposed to control immigration, but the opposite happened. Illegal immigration increased during Joe Biden's term. It's a key issue for U.S. voters, which is why Donald Trump is hammering on it. But let's be honest here. All of us know how this will play out. Harris will keep calling Trump a convicted felon, and Trump will hit back with insults, and the so-called policy issues will be forgotten. This is the level of discourse in American democracy: insults, conspiracy theories, and blatant lies. I wonder what the Democracy Index will say about this. Which brings us to Benjamin Netanyahu, who has finally got what he wanted: attention. Netanyahu's been in America for 2 days. He's had engagements, but finally he got to be the star of the show. Yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister took the mic. He addressed the US Congress. It was a joint session. Netanyahu spoke for 56 minutes, but he had to pause for almost 50 rounds of applause. This is not his first time, though. He's addressed the US Congress in the past as well, 4 times in all. That's more than any other foreign leader. It's an achievement in itself. But what else did this speech achieve? We can think of 3 things. Number 1, Netanyahu defended his war in Gaza. Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th. Israel retaliated, but now it's been 10 months. The death toll is mounting. The world is calling for peace, and Israelis are asking Netanyahu to stop. So, of course, that's the first thing that he talked about.
The day after we defeat Hamas, a new Gaza can emerge. My vision for that day is of a demilitarized and de-radicalized Gaza. Israel does not seek to resettle Gaza, but for the foreseeable future, we must retain overriding security control there to prevent the resurgence of terror, to ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel.
Takeaway number 2, there were a lot of mentions of Joe Biden. Netanyahu thanked him profusely. He even praised his visit to Israel, but he did not forget Donald Trump. After all, it's an election year in America, and Netanyahu is keeping his options open.
I thank President Biden for his heartfelt support for Israel after the savage attack on October 7th. He rightly called Hamas sheer evil. He dispatched 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East to deter a wider war. And he came to Israel to stand with us during our darkest hour, a visit that will never be forgotten. I also want to thank President Trump for all the things he did for Israel, from recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, to confronting Iran's aggression, to recognizing Jerusalem as our capital and moving the American embassy there.
With all the thank yous done, it was down to business to talk about what Netanyahu really wanted. Which brings us to takeaway number 3, the Abraham Alliance. Netanyahu floated the idea during his speech. He proposed a security alliance forged by America and Israel to stand up against Iran's so-called axis of terror. And they won't be alone. They'll be joined by the Arab states, almost like a West Asian NATO. At least that's the proposal. And that's all that it is at this point, a proposal. Netanyahu believes that it's the natural extension of the Abraham Accords. That's Israel's normalization deals with Arab states. They're called the Abraham Accords. Now he wants an Abraham alliance.
We meet today at a crossroads of history. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization.
But as he talked about uniting West Asia, his speech was dividing America, especially the US Congress. The House may look packed, but half of all Congress Democrats were missing. They were boycotting the speech, and the list included top Democrat Nancy Pelosi, although some critics of the Israeli leader did show up, like Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian-American lawmaker. Throughout his speech, he was holding up a sign. It said war criminal on one side and guilty of genocide on the other. But while Democrats are missing, Netanyahu had a special guest in the room. It was Elon Musk. The Tesla CEO came for the address. He sat with a private box, along with Netanyahu's wife and Israeli leaders. Meanwhile, thousands gathered outside the Capitol building. They protested against the Israeli Prime Minister. One protester even spray-painted a Hamas support message on a monument. Soon the situation got out of hand. The security asked them to step back. The protesters did not listen, so police officers used pepper spray. Netanyahu is no stranger to such protests, though. They've been following him ever since he landed in America, but he did have a message for them this time.
Well, I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots.
So Netanyahu outlined his plan, wooed lawmakers, enraged protesters, and left America in doubt, which sounds like a job well done. But here's something that he missed out on. A ceasefire. There was no mention of a peace deal in his speech. No mention of when the war will end. No mention of when the hostages will return home. No mention of any of these things. He remained quiet on all these issues, which is strange because America is pushing hard for a peace deal. Biden wants to get it done. It's a message he will convey to Netanyahu personally. The two leaders will meet later today, after which US officials are likely to fly to West Asia. This includes CIA Director William Burns and Biden's top Middle East advisor, Brett McGurk. They will meet Qatari and Egyptian mediators. Earlier this month, peace talks were making progress, but Israel's strikes in Gaza derailed them. So this time, America will hope to bridge the gap. Of course, none of it will work unless the Israeli Prime Minister is on board. Does he even want a peace deal? You cannot count on it. Washington, D.C. wasn't the only American hotspot yesterday. There were also startling developments at the other end of the country. The U.S. was forced to scramble its jets because some unwelcome guests were seen in the west, near the state of Alaska. A fleet of aircraft entered America's air defense identification zone. Aircraft from Russia and China. These were 4 nuclear-capable bombers, 2 Russian Tu-95s and 2 Chinese H-6s. And they weren't alone, of course. Bombers always travel with company. These bombers were accompanied by Su-30SMs and Su-35s. The aircraft were apparently conducting joint training drills. You can see them in this video. The Russian bomber is being refueled mid-air, which is a standard drill to prepare for long-range missions. This video that you see was released by the Russian Defense Ministry. They were rather nonchalant about this whole incident. The US, on the other hand, was not. Let's show you a statement from NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. It's a joint command of the American and Canadian Air Force. and it is their job to secure the area around Alaska. Now, NORAD detected the Russian and Chinese aircraft. It noticed them entering America's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. The ADIZ is the shaded area on this map. Any aircraft that enters this zone needs to notify the United States. It isn't illegal to enter the area, but the US wants to be informed. That is why it intercepts aircraft that enter this zone. NORAD did that yesterday as well. It scrambled jets to escort the Chinese and Russian bombers. The US deployed F-16s and F-35s. Canada sent CF-18s. You can see the Western aircraft in the footage released by Russia. They took up positions near the Russian and Chinese planes and flew alongside them. And this was the NORAD statement about the incident. They say, and I'm quoting, "The Russian and PRC aircraft remained in international airspace and did not enter American or Canadian sovereign airspace. This Russian and PRC activity in the Alaska ADIZ is not seen as a threat." And NORAD will continue to monitor competitor activity near North America and meet presence with presence. The Americans were meeting presence with presence, basically telling China and Russia that the US was watching. Russia clearly doesn't care. This is not their first foray into the Alaskan identification zone. Russia sent bombers there in May as well, and before that in February. And this happens every few months, it seems, so it shouldn't be a big deal, especially as the US keeps doing the same as well. Russia intercepted 2 American bombers earlier this year near the Arctic. So it seems both countries, the US and Russia, keep playing these little mind games. But yesterday's incident was different for one simple reason. China was involved. China doesn't really do this often. It usually stays away from the American identification zone, but yesterday it sent nuclear-capable bombers to the area, and that is a massive escalation, even if it was completely legal. Beijing later tried to downplay the incident.
This action does not target any third party and is in line with relevant international law and practice and has nothing to do with the current international and regional situation.
China was saying don't read too much into this. They said it was a regular training exercise and nothing sinister. But Washington isn't likely to believe that. China sent nuclear-capable bombers to the American identification zone for the very first time, and it likely won't be the last. It was a challenge for supremacy in the Pacific and Arctic regions, and a joint Sino-Russian challenge at that. Will the US respond in a similar fashion, or will it ignore this provocation? We'll probably find out soon enough. To the United Kingdom now, where a video from the Manchester airport is going viral. It shows police officers beating up 2 men. They're seen kicking their heads and pinning them down to the floor. The incident has since triggered a lot of outrage. These men were British Pakistanis, and the police have been accused of racism. But what led to this incident in the first place? Is this police brutality, is it justified? Our next report tells you.
It's a video that's doing the rounds on the internet. In the first few seconds, you see a police officer. He's holding a taser over a man. You can see the man lying on the ground. Next to this man is a woman in a hijab. She's pleading with the officers to stop, but it gets worse. The officer goes ahead to kick the man's head. He again stomps his head with his boot, finally using his knee to pin him down. The officer then moves to another man. He tells him to kneel. The man is seen obeying, but the officer kicks him in the stomach. He then pins him down too. Amid all this, 2 female officers are also seen present. They try to prevent 3 men from filming the whole incident. This took place at the Manchester airport. The police in the video are British police officers. The arrested men and women belong to a British Pakistani family. Ever since the video was shared, it's left social media enraged. The police have been accused of racism. There were also protests outside the Manchester police headquarters. People joined in to denounce police brutality, and they demanded accountability.
Was shot dead.
Pakistan too waded into this. Its Foreign Office spokesperson raised concerns about the excessive use of force in the video. The Pakistan mission in Manchester also jumped into action. It got in touch with the community and also talked to the local police. But what exactly led to this incident? The police have now come up with a statement. They say it started when the police tried to arrest one of the family members. That led to a clash. 3 officers were assaulted. One police officer ended up breaking her nose. This triggered the incident that has now gone viral. Manchester police also acknowledged the conduct of its police officers. One of them has been suspended since then. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer too spoke about this.
Well, I have seen the footage, and for that reason I do understand the public concern. Obviously action has now been taken in relation to the suspension of an officer, and the Home Secretary is already having those discussions with the Mayor of Manchester. I think they've already happened, or they're taking place as we speak.
But the public, as well as UK lawmakers, aren't satisfied with this. They want an independent probe. And while the trigger for the current incident is yet to be established, questions are being raised over anti-Muslim hate crimes in the UK. It has only surged since the Gaza war last October. Reports suggest there has been a 335% increase in crimes targeting Muslims in the United Kingdom. Between October 7th and the 7th of February, there have been 2,010 Islamophobic incidents. Muslim women were targeted in 2 out of every 3 recorded incidents, which makes this latest incident even more alarming. British trade unionist Howard Beckett has described the attack as the most brutal of police assaults on 2 men. For now, the Manchester police is probing the incident, but they have a lot of questions to answer. One of the most important being what justified this brutal assault.
कॉर्पोरेशन है वो अपनी पूरी कोशिश कर रहे हैं जो फ्लडिंग एरिया है वहां से जल्द पानी को निकाला जा सके, लेकिन अब जो स्थिति है वो ज़्यादा अच्छी नहीं दिख पा रही है। कई इलाकों में खासकर जो लो लाइन इलाके हैं पुणे और पुणे डिस्ट्रिक्ट के, वहां पे काफ़ी ज़्यादा पानी भर चुका है। जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि खड़गवासला डैम से 40,000 क्यूसेक पानी छोड़ने की वजह से जो फ्लडिंग है वो और भी होती जा रही है और पूरे पुणे डिस्ट्रिक्ट में रेड अलर्ट घोषित किया गया है।
राइट, ऑल्सो विवेक, क्या मुंबई की अगर बात करें तो क्या स्थिति है और स्पेशली लो लाइंग एरियाज के लिए क्या एडवाइजरी है?
देखिए, अगर खाली हम मुंबई की बात करें तो सुबह 8 बजे से पहले मुंबई में येलो अलर्ट था, लेकिन कंटिन्यू बारिश होने की वजह से अब जो है वो जो येलो अलर्ट है वो ऑरेंज अलर्ट में कन्वर्ट हो चुका है। और आईएमडी के लोगों का कहना है कि सुबह 10 बजे तक ये येलो अलर्ट होगा। 10 बजे के बाद फिर से मॉनिटरिंग की जाएगी सिचुएशन को, उसके बाद कॉल जाएगा कि येलो ऑरेंज अलर्ट को आगे मॉडिफाई करना है या नहीं। इसी वजह से मुंबई के भी कई इलाकों में बारिश हो रही है, खासकर जो लो लाइन इलाके हैं कुर्ला, चेंबूर, विक्रोली, घाटकोपर, इन जगहों पर वाटर लॉगिंग की थोड़ी जो शिकायतें वो आ रही हैं। लेकिन फिलहाल अगर बात की जाए तो ऑरेंज अलर्ट है। जो सबब की बात करें तो मिलन सबवे, अंधेरी सबवे, खार सबवे को बंद कर दिया गया है क्योंकि इस पूरे सबवे में पानी भर चुका है। और यही कोशिश की जा रही है कि जो बीएमसी ने मानसून से पहले जो तैयारियां की थी, हर जगह वाटर पंप लगाए गए हैं, उन सभी वाटर पंप के जरिए से पानी को निकाला जाए। लेकिन ऑरेंज अलर्ट होने के बावजूद भी मुंबई और आसपास के इलाकों में तेज बारिश हो रही है। नवी मुंबई और थाने, इन दोनों डिस्ट्रिक्ट को रेड अलर्ट में रखा गया है। वहां पर भी बहुत ज्यादा तेज बारिश हो रही है कल रात से।
Right, thank you so much for that, Vivek. And on that note, we are slipping into a very short break. Coming right back. Now getting some breaking news from Maharashtra. Schools in Pune, Pimpri, Chindwara and nearby areas have been shut today as rains batter the region. Besides Pune city, the order to shut schools also applies for Pimpri, Chindwara, Bor, Vele, Mawal, Mulshi and other areas of Maharashtra. In fact, the Met Department has issued an orange alert for Mumbai and Palghar, and there has been a red alert that's been issued for Navi Mumbai and Thane. My colleague Yesha has more details. Yesha, what is the situation of the rainfall in the region? And now that we see orange and red alert in various places in Maharashtra, what is it looking like for not just the schools being shut, but also for general colleges and offices that will be allowed to function?
So when you speak of the situation of rains in not only Mumbai but various parts of Maharashtra, as of now, of course, heavy rains continue in most of the parts of the state. Particularly when you speak of Pune, Mulshi area, as well as Baudhan, apart from that Raigad area, is where we've seen waterlogging. In fact, in several places in Pune, waterlogging is, there's 2 to 3 feet waterlogging where there are several NDRF teams which have been deployed in and around Pune to rescue people. Apart from that, of course, there are, we also see that there is a heavy rain alert for the next...
Have you heard of gaslighting? It's basically psychological manipulation. You trick someone into questioning their own sanity, their own morals and decisions. Toxic boyfriends do it all the time, and so does the United States of America. Don't believe me? Listen to this US diplomat talking about India.
Mr. Chairman, I could not agree with you more about our disappointment about the symbolism and the timing of Prime Minister Modi's trip to Moscow. We are having those tough conversations with our Indian friends.
Classic strategy. I'm not angry about what you did. I'm just disappointed. Well, we've got news for the United States. New Delhi doesn't need validation. Also, let's just check the calendar. These comments were made in Washington on Tuesday. Guess who was also in Washington on Tuesday? Benjamin Netanyahu, a man whose war has killed more than 38,000 Palestinians. Doesn't that count as bad symbolism? I guess not. But let's focus on India for now. The man you just heard is Donald Lu. He's in charge of America's foreign policy in South Asia. This week, he spoke to the US Senate. He was asked about Prime Minister Modi's recent trip to Moscow. What you heard was his response. Just 2 problems, though. One, it's none of Washington's business. As a friend, you can always share concerns, but you do so privately, not in a televised Senate meeting. But then again, maybe that's the whole point. Use a public forum to build pressure. Of course, New Delhi is having none of it. Listen to what the Foreign Ministry spokesperson said today.
You must understand that India has long-standing relationship with Russia that is based on mutuality of interests. In a multipolar world, all countries have the freedom of choice. It is essential for everybody to be mindful of and appreciate such realities.
Which brings us to the second part of gaslighting, which is also problem number 2. The US is doing the same thing. You see, Donald Lu is also in charge of Pakistan. So he spoke about Washington's Islamabad policy as well. And what did he say? That China is Pakistan's past, America would be the future.
How do we leverage our position with Pakistan, our historic relationship, given also our relationship with India, and that's developing very quickly? How do we balance that and keep that in our advantage?
In the 2 seconds I have, I'll say, China is the past in terms of investments in Pakistan. We are the future.
How about that? India should stay away from America's rival, which is Russia, but America can support India's rival, which is Pakistan. What sort of double standard is this? Just think about it. Russia and the US are not at war. They don't have border disputes. All they have is a proxy conflict. Very different from India and Pakistan. Pakistan's policies have actively hurt India. Their terrorists are still launching attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. They are killing Indian soldiers. And what does Washington do? Promise more support to Pakistan. Let's take a closer look at the track record. Prime Minister Modi did not sign defense deals in Moscow. Unlike China, India is not arming Russia, nor is it sending dual-use equipment. But yes, we are buying cheap Russian energy for our people. Even Donald Lu admitted this. He said no major arms deals were signed in Moscow.
We did not see any new major defense deals. We saw no major discussion of technology cooperation. In addition, you have Modi having said in front of Putin on live television his feeling that the war in Ukraine could not be won on the battlefield.
Not just that, Prime Minister Modi also gave a message of peace. He reiterated his opposition to wars and he condemned the death of children. Now compare that to Washington. In 2022, they announced a new military package for Pakistan, almost $450 million to upgrade their fighter jets. In 2023, Pakistan renewed a military deal with the United States, a deal that allows Washington to sell arms to Pakistan. So if anyone should be disappointed, it is India, because US policy actively threatens India's national security. Which raises the question, what should we learn from this episode? Mainly two things. One, Washington never learns. They've tried to lecture India before, and each time India has hit back, yet the Americans keep coming back for seconds. Maybe it's their default mode. Or maybe it's a superpower complex. The belief that you are the center of the world, that everyone must live by your rules. And point number two, it shows there is work to be done on this relationship, because let's face it, India and the US need each other, whether it's for economic development or to safeguard supply chains or to take on China or to fight climate change. This is an era-defining friendship, but it's not a stable one yet. We've come a long way since the trust deficit of the Cold War, but much more needs to be done, because such comments will gradually build up resentment and friction. How long before that spills over and spoils cooperation? Let's hope we never find out. Staying with India's foreign policy, let me ask a more fundamental question. Who sets India's foreign policy? Easy answer, the central government in New Delhi. But what if state governments also jump in? And more importantly, can they? There's a debate on this issue right now, thanks to West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee. What did she do? Well, last week, there were protests in Bangladesh. More than 100 people were killed, many more were injured, and amid the violence, Mamata Banerjee issued an offer. She said if refugees came from Bangladesh, she would offer them shelter.
I won't comment on Bangladesh. Whatever there is to say, the Indian government will say. But if helpless people knock on Bengal's doors, we will give them shelter.
Just one problem though, that's not her offer to make. So Bangladesh has pushed back. They've lodged a formal complaint with the Indian High Commission in Dhaka.
We have received a diplomatic note, a communication from the Bangladeshi side protesting the comments made by Chief Minister of West Bengal. Again, I would like to underline that under the 7th Schedule, List 1, Union List, Item 10 of our Constitution, the conduct of foreign affairs and all matters which bring the Union into relation with any foreign country are the sole prerogative of the Union government.
The law does check out. Foreign policy is the central government's domain. The states have no business there. Yes, they can give suggestions to the foreign ministry, but that's it. You cannot take matters into your own hands. And it's not just West Bengal, by the way. Kerala has done something similar. They have appointed a so-called foreign secretary, an official to handle Kerala's affairs abroad. Now, this is a slippery slope, because foreign policy is not like your tax or liquor laws. You can't have different ones for different states. It must be one single policy. The makers of our constitution recognized this. They wanted India to speak in one voice abroad, which is why the center sets the foreign policy. Imagine if that wasn't the case. What if Jammu and Kashmir had its own foreign policy to negotiate with Pakistan? What if Tamil Nadu had its own policy to reach out to Tamils in Sri Lanka? What if Punjab had its own policy and faced pressures from Khalistanis? And what if Arunachal Pradesh had its own foreign policy? Would they negotiate with China for recognition? Do you see why this is chaotic? National interest would take a back seat and regional interest would triumph. The makers of India's constitution wanted to prevent that, so certain powers were left only to the center, like foreign policy and defense. If you dilute that, you set a dangerous precedent. Also, what happens if the policies contradict each other? West Bengal may want to welcome refugees, but Assam certainly doesn't. So will they raise armies to fight it out? Such moves weaken the foundation of India's federalism, its vertical division of power. The question is, what can be done about it? First is to set the record straight. The BJP has called the Kerala government's move unconstitutional. Let's see if a legal challenge follows. If it does, the courts can step in and offer closure. Secondly, we need to heal federal divisions. And this goes beyond just foreign policy. Consider the row between West Bengal and the CBI. The CBI is the Central Bureau of Investigation. It is India's elite probe agency. But Mamata Banerjee says it's been weaponized. So in 2018, she shut the CBI out from her state. She withdrew West Bengal's general consent to the CBI. That matter is now in court. Another example is the new citizenship law, or the CAA. The Indian Parliament has passed it. The Supreme Court of India has refused to stay it, yet some states have passed resolutions against it. They say we will not abide by the CAA. And do not get us wrong, there are problems on the other side as well. Look at what Tamil Nadu's governor is doing. He's refusing to sign bills passed by the state government, refusing to read the speeches prepared by the government, and holding up crucial appointments. Again, this is not what the Constitution envisioned. Governors are supposed to be nominal figures. The real power lies with the government. And all of this points to one problem: strains in India's federal structure. Think of it as a machine with many gears. All of them must work together for India to progress. They must cooperate and complement. And most importantly, not step on each other's toes. We often say that federalism is India's strength, and it truly is. But our political parties better get their act together. If not, that strength may become a hurdle. Now let's turn our attention to Paris, the capital of France and the host city of the Olympic Games this year. Paris says it wants inclusive and socially responsible games, which is ironic because the city couldn't be farther from this goal. Authorities are social cleansing Paris. What does that mean? Social cleansing is removing members of society who are deemed undesirable, like the poor. And that's what Paris is doing, removing them, giving migrants and unhoused people a one-way ticket to the outskirts. This past year, about 13,000 people have been sent away in buses. What of their homes, their livelihoods, their families? It doesn't matter, it seems. After all, France is only following a well-known Olympic tradition. Here's a report.
This is Paris, the capital of France, the city of love, the city of light. Call it what you want, but watch any rom-com or Netflix show, and this is the Paris you will see. Jaw-dropping views, good food, and locals trotting about in picture-perfect outfits. But, as they say, if something looks too good to be true, it probably is. Because this is also Paris. So is this. And this. But the government doesn't want you to know that, especially with the Olympic Games beginning tomorrow on July 26th, which is why the Olympic host city is quietly cleaning up. It is forcibly relocating migrant and unhoused people. It is targeting those who are already among the most vulnerable, including entire families and children. This is the very definition of social cleansing.
There's clearly been a move away from the Paris region since the arrival of the Olympic Games. There is a social cleansing to prepare for the arrival of tourists and the Games.
But Paris is determined. Within the past year, almost 13,000 marginal Parisians have been moved outside Paris, including sex workers, drug users, unhoused people, and migrants.
I was taken to a small town and I agreed to stay. Some people before me said, there is no work. A small town where there's no work. And I'm looking for work. So I said, thank you, but I'm sorry, I can't stay here.
Being moved to other regions is not at all suited to the situation of migrants. They can't afford it because they'll lose their jobs that are very hard to get if you're a foreigner or refugee, and you've had a difficult life.
People are being filled in buses and transported to temporary shelters that were set up on the outskirts of Paris. Authorities couldn't literally shove the poor under the rug. They are going for the metaphorical approach, giving them bus rides to a land far, far away.
There is a cruel lack of accommodation in our country that when Emmanuel Macron came to power in 2017, there were 143,000 people on the streets. Today, there are 330,000 rough sleepers, an increase of 130%, and we find ourselves today in France, the 7th largest economy in the world, with the least housing construction in our country since 2005. So we're also facing a major housing disaster.
So this is a short-term fix for the housing as well as the migrant issue. But this is not shocking. In fact, it is an Olympic tradition. Before the games begin, a majority of the host cities displace their unhoused and poor. Sometimes it happens quietly by building migrant shelters. Other times, people are simply kicked on the streets. We saw this in 2021, when the unhoused were told that they have no place in the Tokyo Olympics. And the time before that, in 2016, when Brazil carefully socially cleansed Rio. In fact, this tradition goes back decades. In 1996, when the Summer Olympics were held in Atlanta in the US, 9,000 unhoused people were jailed or given a one-way bus ticket. They were called eyesores. This is par for the course when it comes to the Olympics. So the next time French authorities repeat their promise of an inclusive and socially responsible Paris Olympics, know that the message comes with a disclaimer.
Are in the entire state of Maharashtra, in Raigad as well. We see that the heavy rains have been experienced, which is where not only Pune but also Raigad, schools in Raigad have also been declared an off for today, considering the heavy rains. Yes.
Also, Yesha, what is the situation looking like in Mumbai? Considering a little bit of rain, especially in low-lying areas, really spells a lot of havoc there. It is a trouble for commuters, to say the least. So what is the situation there?
So yes, of course, there's been incessant rains in Mumbai ever since late last night. However, as of now, schools and colleges have been kept. As of now, there's no holiday declared for schools and colleges. But of course, several low-lying areas, like you rightly mentioned, including Andheri subway and several such locations, they've been there is waterlogging that's been experienced, and such subways have been shut. So yes, though we see that when it comes to local trains, it's the lifeline of Mumbai. That in fact impacts the most. That impacts the commute most in Mumbai. As of now, those are running well, but when it comes to several low-lying areas, there is waterlogging that's already started in several parts of the city. Yes.
Right, thank you so much for that, Yesha. Let me also take this across to my colleague Vivek Gupta from News 18 India, who's with us on the broadcast. Vivek, the situation in Pune and other adjoining areas has really worsened. Orange and red alerts for Navi Mumbai as well. What is it looking like for this entire week, considering there's one more day for the schools to probably be allowed to not function because of the rain? So what are you learning in that regard?
बिल्कुल सही कहा आपने। देखिए, पुणे में कल देर रात से काफ़ी ज़्यादा तेज़ बारिश हो रही है और इतनी ज़्यादा बारिश होने की वजह से पुणे कलेक्टर ने डिसाइड किया है कि सभी स्कूलों को अब इस पुणे में बंद कर दिया गया है और पुणे डिस्ट्रिक्ट के जितने भी आसपास के इलाके हैं वहाँ पर फ्लडिंग हो रही है। फ्लडिंग की वजह से रोड और घरों तक पूरा तरह से पानी भर चुका है। लोगों को काफ़ी ज़्यादा परेशानी झेलनी पड़ रही है। इसी वजह से अब पुणे कलेक्टर ने एक एडवाइजरी जारी की है और साफ तौर पे कहा है कि पूरे पुणे डिस्ट्रिक्ट में रेड अलर्ट घोषित कर दिया गया है। सभी स्कूलों को बंद कर दिया गया है, जिसके बाद जो भी इमरजेंसी काम ना हो अपने घरों से बाहर ना निकलें, क्योंकि सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट बात यह है कि खड़क पासला डैम से 40,000 क्यूसेक पानी को छोड़ा जा रहा है। अगर बारिश इसी तरह कंटिन्यू रही तो पुणे के आसपास के इलाकों में और भी पानी भर सकता है। यही वजह है कि पुणे कलेक्टर ने सभी लोगों से कहा है कि कोई भी जरूरी काम ना हो तो अपने घरों से बाहर ना निकलें, गवर्नमेंट और प्रशासन की हेल्प करें। और गवर्नमेंट और जो वहाँ के लोकल म्यूनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन है वो अपनी पूरी कोशिश कर रहे हैं जो फ्लडिंग एरिया है वहाँ से जल्द पानी को निकाला जाए।
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Typhoon Gemi makes landfall near Taiwan, killing at least 22 people and inundating nearby areas. Climate activists shut down a German airport by gluing their hands to the tarmac. And in a first, a French Paralympian carries the Olympic flame wearing a robotic exoskeleton. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1978, the world's first baby conceived by IVF was born. IVF stands for in vitro fertilization. It involves the fertilization of the female egg in a laboratory. Today, IVF is a mainstream medical treatment for infertility. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me Ayushman Singh Jamwa. Ladies and gentlemen, big breaking news coming in at the top of the bulletin where a major crackdown on corruption has been reported from the state of Uttar Pradesh after the